Hαίrε and welcome. Today we are going to be finishing off John chapter 2 as we go through verses 24 and 25, finishing this last paragraph and tying off the chapter at long last. So that means next week we start chapter 3, unless somebody has asked me to do something else, in which case we might be done with John for a while. I have no idea. Let's go ahead and get started. Here is the rubric, everything we're looking for as we go through this text, and now reading it aloud. Autos de Jesus uk episteuan hauton autois diatu auton gnoskein pantas. Kai hoti u creon e ken hina tis marturese peritu anthropu. Autos gar agnosken ti ein en toi anthropoi. This is a very enigmatic sentence. Very first thing we find is a demonstrative, so we don't care. We want to find a verb. We move on ahead. Uk, we should definitely take note of that. That's going to be a negative, not. And here we go. Episteuan. Epsilon new, augmenting vowel. There's no sigma there, so we know this can't be aorist. It has to be imperfect. Boy, a lot of imperfect. Singular, imperfect, active, and indicative. I really need to update this. So now we need to find a singular subject. We go back to our demonstrative, autos and Jesus. Both of those are clearly nominative singular. Don't need to parse them again. This, wrong. Great. My brain just went blank. Normally this would be a personal pronoun, like we have right there, his. So since this is the nominative, this is acting as a demonstrative. I'm a dummy. I'm sorry. This, Jesus, but this Jesus, uk episteuan, so we have our imperfect problem, was believing, trusting, used to believe, trust, kept believing, kept trusting, began to believe, began to trust, believed, trusted. Those are different options there. Let's move on ahead and figure out what's going on after this before we do anything more. Not a verb, not a verb, not a verb. Aha! Epsilon iota nu, no augmenting vowel. This tells us that this is going to be a present active infinitive. Isn't that nice? And then something else we should definitely be sure to take note of, to, with auton. Auton would not normally want an article. There's no noun here except gnosken. Gnosken, an infinitive, technically is a noun. So with an article, no noun obviously, therefore it to modify, gnosken has to be its object, which then means we have an articular infinitive. Love these things. And that makes sense because we've got dia here. Dia needs something to be its object. Dia plus the accusative, or technically plus the infinitive. And that's the case that the infinitive would be fulfilling right here with to. To referring to gnosken as an accusative, singular, neuter noun. Present active infinitive. Auton is not neuter because we got that nu right there. So that should actually be our first sign that to can't modify that and instead has to go to gnosken. I keep saying the word first, don't I? Oh gosh, let's run through this from the start. Preposition, so we know we want an object of the preposition. To, that's clearly going to be the article for the object of the preposition. Auton, to is neuter because there's no nu. Auton is masculine because there is a nu. So we know these two don't go together. Immediately upon getting to this third word, we should know problem. So we look ahead, gnosken, infinitive. Infinitives are neuter, so now we know the referent of to. That leaves us with the confusion, what is this? To plus an infinitive because an articular infinitive, object of the preposition. But auton is still confusing. Normally the only thing that can be inside a prepositional phrase is a genitive to own the prepositional phrase, but we don't have a normal type of prepositional phrase. Instead, auton with an infinitive is going to be acting as the subject. So this is the verb as the object of dia, with auton as the person doing the verb. And then over here we've got its object. So accusative, read nominative, singular, masculine, referring all the way back to Jesus. And then this translates, if I can remember, dia with the accusative or the infinitive means because he, as a subject in the accusative case, knows. However, as a subordinate clause with the imperfect right here, we know that we should instead treat this as past tense, contemporaneous action. He knew Pontes. Everyone. Everyone is singular. All. There we go. Accusative, plural, masculine. Got that there to remind us. Singulars, pantas, pasa, panta, masculine, plural. So there we go. Articular infinitives are quite frequently frustrating to figure out what exactly they're doing. It really lies with the preposition and the things around it. So now we've got our object here and our subject here. Our subject is going to be the first accusative. The object is usually going to be the second accusative. So that's figured out. Now we can come back to this and translate the rest of it. Auton, with that aspiration mark right there, it's going to mean himself. Accusative, singular, masculine, himself. Autois, omicron iota sigma, is dative, plural, masculine. And normally it would be believed to them, as we had right here, into his name, prepositional phrase, and beforehand the disciples, they believed the dative word and the dative sermon. I realize now that what I was saying about this was wrong. You'll have to look at that video to figure that out. I'm sorry. Oh well. So, in this case, I don't think it's he was believing them, because we've got an object right here. So I think instead of believe as our translation, we should use trust. Trust in English takes an object. One can trust something to something else, which would explain the indirect object here. Trust this to them. So now our different options. But this Jesus was not trusting himself to them because he knew all. But this Jesus began to not trust himself to them because this Jesus kept not trusting himself to them because this Jesus used to not trust himself to them because this Jesus did not trust himself to them. I think in this case, the emphatic sounds the best in English, but otherwise it's going to be the continual. So, trusted, I'm going to go with secondary option, was trusting. Since we got not there, I'm going to change this from trusted to did not trust himself. Okay. Now we can move on to verse 5. And hoti, you should be very careful of that right there. Immediately we know that there's some sort of interesting going on, or could just be a that or a because. Not showing a special clause. Aha, eken. Epsilon nu here is going to be a third person. Now you know what time of day it is because of the bell. Singular. Epsilon iota here is a contraction of the epsilon that normally comes at the beginning of echo here with another epsilon, and together they become ei. So this is imperfect, active, and indicative. I think I threw up false flags about that. Oh, well. Now, before we translate this, let's take a look beforehand at kreian. Now, if you paid special attention to this word in whatever text you learned Greek from, you should know, aha, kreian plus echo shows need or necessity in how it is translated. And we wouldn't translate this as he has possession of crayon, because crayon isn't a physical object that you can hold. Instead, this just shows he needs something, he lacks something. And yeah, I was stupid brain. I was thinking of Hina when I looked at this. That, or because not he was having, used to have, kept having, began to have, had, need, or you just say, because he did not need. I'm going to just abbreviate it. He did not need Hina, that, and this is definitely going to be a purpose. He did not need that subjunctive clause, which we find right here with martu re sei, eta sub iota. Sigma tells us this can't be the present tense. It's either going to be the future or the aorist. This ending here is technically a future ending and an aorist subjunctive ending. However, with this Hina here, and especially this clause right here, we know subjunctive is the correct one. So, third singular aorist active subjunctive and Hina purpose clause. He did not need in order that tis from tis t, nominative singular masculine, someone, witness, is not spelled with a H. Why am I writing an H down? That's how I said it. Witness. Peri to anthropou. Peri preposition with the genitive here. Singular, masculine. About. Concerning. The man. Okay, so translating this as an indicative, because that's how the English handles it, but technically would mean that someone may have witnessed about the man. However, easier in English, that someone witness. And he, with an E, did not need that someone witness about the man. Comma, gar, for, post-positive, agenosken, epsilon nu, augmenting vowel. We know it's imperfect. Same as that, so I'm just going to draw it down. He was knowing, kept knowing, began to know, used to know, knew. And I think, since this is an explanation, emphatic is going to be best. Get rid of that. He knew himself. What am I writing down? H-O-U. Where is my brain? I have no idea. It was a long week and a long drive yesterday. Let's get back to the text. If I ever figure that out, I'll let you know. For he himself knew. T from tis T, so this is going to be the neuter form. That means we have two different options here. As a neuter, it can either mean why, or it can be nominative or accusative singular. And we need to take a look at the rest to figure out which that is. Since we got ein, why, I'm not sure makes that much sense, but ein, parsed it before, was n preposition going through here, plus dative, singular, masculine, in the man. So then our two options are, for he himself knew why was in the man. For he himself knew what was in the man. What makes best sense? Accusative? Nope. Nominative, singular. Neuter as the subject of that. And there we go. Whew. Apart from my horribly wandering brain, this went pretty well. Let's take a look at it in its own context. But this Jesus did not trust himself to them because he knew all. We might say all people. Wrong type of bracket. and because he did not need that someone witness concerning the man, for he himself knew what was in the man. And there we have it, from verse 23 now. When he was in the Jerusalem in the Passover, in the festival, many people believed into his name, because or when they looked at, they observed his signs which he was doing, or he kept doing. But this Jesus did not trust himself to them, because he knew all people, and because he did not need that someone witness about the man, for he himself knew what was in the man. Now, what does this verse mean? You'll have to ask somebody who actually has studied more than just the language. I am not sure what's going on, clearly. Well, thank you very much for joining me through chapter 2. I hope taking a look at this has been helpful for you, and I hope you've learned something other than that I'm just a confused, wandering idiot. Anyway, have a good day. Enjoy your life. We'll see what comes next week. Farewell.
Hey, not asleep yet? That's okay. I've got tons of other equally sleep-inducing videos for you to watch. Check them out.